Hi,
Hello,
how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good as well. You had dinner?
Yes.
Great, great. So we will just wait for 2-3 minutes and let our audience join as well.
Sure.
I just want to confirm this. Is my voice audible and there's no disturbances from my side, right?
No, no, that's perfect. Your voice is audible.
Great. Okay. So let's just wait for another 2 minutes. I think we should not delay this more, and our audience can join anytime in between the conversation. And I think we can begin with it.
Sure.
Okay. So, but before we begin our discussion, I would like to take a moment for the tragic and horrifying incident at Ajikar Medical Hospital, and we are deeply saddened. We urge that the guilty be swiftly brought to justice, and our hearts go out to the victim's family, and we stand with them in their pursuit of justice. So,
Yeah.
yes,
No, I was just reading some news on it and it's been really sad and I think the nationwide protests that are going on right now is deeply needed and if possible, of course, people do join and raise voice against it.
yes, absolutely. So, let's just take a few seconds and then we can start with it. So, today's discussion is incredibly important and deeply relevant to our societies. We are here to discuss a pervasive issue that affects so many people across different cultures and communities, that is, street harassment. Let me introduce you all to Neonika Roy, who will share her insights on this topic. Nayonika is a development sector professional holding expertise in working towards girl child education, social justice, gender equality, and women leadership. Her ardor and rigor towards unveiling the stories of women and girls belonging to marginalized communities goes beyond any defined ambit. She believes in reaching to the sorry to the crevices of these communities and creating safe spaces to hear the unheard voices of women and girls through her work. She continuously strives to broaden her horizons and cater to girls and women in various capacities. An alumnus of Tata Institute of Social Sciences and Indian School of Business, Neonika has worked with various respectable institutions of the sector, including Ministry of Women and Child Development, Delhi, and MV Foundation, Hyderabad. She is currently leading the curriculum and communications team and leadership programs at Voice for Girls. She is also a part of the founding cohort of Sehyogi Fellowship, having gained a certification to provide psychosocial support focused on adolescents' mental health. Over the time, she has excelled in designing programs tailored to meet the needs of adolescents and delivering effective training and mentorship. Moreover, she has a keen appreciation for art, is a professional dancer, and an avid reader. So, thank you so much, Nayanika, for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Atika.
So, let's begin with our discussion. So, Nayanika, uh, how you would define street harassment, and does this definition vary across different cultures?
Yes. So starting with street harassment, so it can have a broader purview, right? So street harassment can be something as much as somebody following you or somebody catcalling people, mostly based on gender or appearances of the person, and it can range as much as to rape and sexual harassment in public spaces. So it has a very broad purview in that sense, and it doesn't really define in different cultures differently, but of course depending on the laws which exist in your country, or in the way that people, socio-cultural awareness around it, they may have different notions or perseverance about it. But harassment is harassment. I think that's where we all should put a full stop to. But of course, talking a lot on this community responses and social awareness that people have, a lot of the times people don't realize that even catcalling or following somebody on the road can also form harassment. And a lot of my learning will actually come from the work that I do, because at Voice for Girls we do work with a lot of college going students, be it men, be it women. And a lot of times, when I'm having a conversation with them, they do actually come up and say that I did not know that standing on the road and probably calling somebody names will be counted as harassment, which is sad, because then we are just saying that there is lack of awareness among people among as to what constitutes as harassment in particular. And of course, I mean, the underlining definition remains the same, but if we move from one culture to another, if I go to, for example, to Japan, a lot of groping is prominent over there. So even though if we see that Japanese culture itself promotes politeness and respect, there is a phenomenon in public transportation of groping, which has led to specific legal measures and awareness campaigns which are happening over there. Whereas in some countries, if you say like United Kingdom or United States, you will find that talking about it is very normal and open. But that really does not mean that they really report these things. But yes, talking about it becomes more common in those countries. So from culture to culture, how much we talk about it may shift, but the actual definition of what comes under harassment may not. But again, legally defined ways can be different under what has been legally defined in their own laws.
Thank you, Nayanika. That is very well explained. And I would like to mention the data we have collected on our Safe City app. So, for the month of July, uh, there is 34.4% of cases reported on touching or groping. And I think these are just numbers, but there are so many people that don't report. They are scared. They have so many reasons of not reporting. So, according to you, how likely are victims to report street harassment in different cultural contexts, and what are the barriers that exist?
Very, very, very few. I think that's where the problem arises from. If you still go on and look into the national surveys which have happened around sexual harassment, especially in public areas, you will find that a lot of them say that, okay, these many women face violence, they face harassment. But very few numbers will come out when we talk about what is the actual reporting status, because the actual reporting status will be very less from the number of women who have actually faced it. So, some of the common reasons that people don't report it, and this again goes across cultures in some of the way, is one on the top is victim blaming. If we just take the recent news right now from the medical college in Kolkata, if you have seen, the principal of the college had actually quoted that what is this girl doing over there at night in the seminar hall. So it just starts with that, where we are talking that there is a lot of victim blaming that happens, which will of course let the person who has faced violence not report it in the first place or even talk about it. So if I can go back to my childhood experiences, when I was in school, there were some men who followed me for 2 days straight on the road, and I did not ever come back and tell this in my family because I was scared that okay, they may probably say that it's me or it's my fault, or they may say that why are you walking alone on the street while going to school. So things like that, even though my family has never really given me an impression that that can happen, but we can only imagine what people face in their day to day lives. Again, a lot of girls in rural areas do drop out of schools because of this reason. So they are scared that if they go back to their home and say that they were harassed on the road, the families may think that it's not safe for her honor, and we anyway place the honor of the family in a woman. So they may feel that okay, she shouldn't go to school, and dropouts do happen because of this reason. So if I go just across cultures, still the reporting of harassment is extremely low. Canada may have a little bit high because of the vast prevalence of awareness campaigns which different NGOs do carry out over there, or the legal systems which are prevalent over there. But anyway, in
Uh, Nayonika, are you there?
yes, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, now I can.
Okay, I'm so sorry. Did you lose my voice?
It's all right.
Okay, sure. So yeah, I was saying that okay, there's one that is fear of retaliation, that victims may feel that the perpetrators, or there's a social backlash that may happen, stigma, victim blaming, lack of trust in authorities. You may not feel that your problems are ever going to get solved, and we have innumerable evidences to it, to say that just recently today I was reading a article on Scroll where they said that why do sexual harassment, especially inside institutions, do not get reported. It's because even if they get reported, they may not get solved in real time. And they may take so many months that this person then loses out on opportunities while being there. So there's, of course, a great lack of trust in authorities. And the harassment, of course, it's always placed, the onus is placed on the person who is facing it. And again, a lot of economic and social constraints, because sometimes if it goes to the court and you have to file a report and you have to fight a case, there's a lot of economic and social constraints also that people face. So these may be some reasons because of which reporting often comes down. Across cultures, of course, these are some of the very prominent reasons. Some countries, some cultures, we see that reporting is little bit higher than the rest, but in general there is not a high reporting on this matter.
Thank you, Nayonika, and especially for sharing your personal experience as well. And as you said, that in some parts of mainly Southeast Asia, women may not report harassment because they fear being shamed by their families or communities. And in contrast, in more progressive countries, there are often stronger legal protection, but even there, many victims feel reluctant due to the stigma attached. So, I would just like to take a moment and talk about our Safe City app. Safe City app basically collects anonymous reports from people across the globe, and this data gets aggregated as hot spots on a map, indicating trends at a local level. And the idea is to make this data useful for individuals, local communities, and local administration to identify factors that cause behavior that leads to violence and work on the strategies for solution. And I think when people can report anonymously, there will be a lot of responses we can collect, and which will help us in making the communities more safer and yeah, more safer for everyone. So, Neonika, uh, as we are talking about different cultures and different countries, are there differences in street harassment experiences between the urban and rural settings within the same culture?
There can be some differences, but first of all, of course, great initiative by Red Dot actually on that on Safe City app to say that if when you of course collect reporting anonymously, there are chances that they will report on their natural terms. So that's a amazing thing. Thank you for sharing that. But yeah, coming to your question, when it comes to rural and urban settings, there are differences, little bit, but they are there. For example, in urban settings, there is a anonymity among people. Like you don't know everyone everywhere, and that kind of gives people more kind of um, guts or bravery to actually do these kind of things. And that really exists because you don't know who that person is, you don't know where their family is, so there are chances that they may feel that they'll never get caught, and that's the major problem. When you feel that you are never going to get caught, that's most of the time where people actually do even think of harassing another person. And this has been again evident in different ways, right? One is to say, I mean, this is an example which I really take in most of the places. The one where MS Dhoni's daughter was online. She was told that she'll be raped because Dhoni was not playing well in an IPL, and that's sad because his daughter is so young, she has done nothing, and it's just a game that we are talking about. But even on a cyberspace where we say anonymity is there, when that boy was actually caught and he was asked, why did you write that, he said, I was just angry and I wrote it. I did not mean to do it. And this I did not mean to do, or I did not really touch, really comes out in a lot of levels. So when we say that most of the harassments happen, and it's just about catcalling, it's just about calling somebody names, it's that, and people think that okay, I did not touch the person doesn't know me, there's not going to be any consequences. And that's the common notion, that's the common idea, which first needs to be broken down. And urban areas do promote that, where we don't know the person, we don't know the family, we feel that we will never be caught and this is not going to have any consequence on my life. But when we go into rural settings, again, not saying that this is prevalent more in urban or more in rural, but just to say rural settings have a different context to it. Most of the times rural people face violence in hands of people they already know, and that has been quite common even with the work that Voice for Girls does. So when we go and we talk to adolescent girls and boys in the communities, we have realized that a lot of times the violence is actually perpetrated by somebody who is from their family or neighbor or someone who already knows about their whereabout, about their daily schedule, where they go, where they walk. And that is scary because it is happening with you in the hands of somebody you trust. So that's the kind of difference that you can actually come into being. But not saying that any one of the places face higher or lower kind of violence, because if you go by data, urban, semi urban, rural areas all face harassment to nearly the same degree. And I think this is data back from 2020 by, and it was published in Sage publication. So you're really to say that no, harassment is prevalent across cultures everywhere, but yes, the context may be different, and by whom you face violence can be different.
Thank you, Nayanika, for sharing that. And the example you shared regarding MS Dhoni, it's very sad to hear, and it talks about the mindset of the people as well, and which directly brings our attention to spreading awareness. And I think the one major way is by providing several training, several courses to them. And the first training and the most important training that comes to my mind is bystander intervention. And I think most of the people, they don't even know what is bystander intervention. So according to you, can you discuss the role of this training in addressing the street harassment in your culture and how it is perceived as well? Neonica.
Hello, yes.
Okay.
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, to say, first defining what bystander is, right? So, bystander is somebody who is witnessing the violence that is happening, and the person is kind of not doing anything. So, bystander intervention plays a critical role, especially in addressing street harassment, because that's something which is happening in front of you in public. Now, if you really see bystanders, why do they not? First of all, you have to understand why do they not intervene even when they see violence. Again, one of the major reasons why they may not intervene is because they are scared about their own safety. They have fear of retaliation. That's one of the major prominent reasons. The second can be on gender dynamics. So if it's a man versus a woman versus a trans person, who is going to actually take side of whom? And again, it comes about safety. Women may sometimes feel that, okay, if I intervene over here, will I also face violence? But you will also see that women are the ones who most of the times do intervene when such things happening, because again, there's a solidarity, there's sisterhood which we need to continue. They understand what the other person is facing, which may not be prominent. Um again, the other thing to say that there's a lot of lack of public awareness and training. We don't know, we don't tell people why and what is this happening. They feel that okay, this is something which is their own matter and they are going to solve it on their own. We don't take it into our account to say that we are also part of the society, and if we see something like this, it is our duty to stop it, it is our duty to raise voice against it. And again, to talk, say, their cultural norms, their societal expectations. In a lot of it, it's often considered that, it's their problem, let them handle, and I am not going to be a part of it, especially if the violence that they witness is happening between two people who already know each other. In that case, definitely the bystanders will not intervene until and unless they're really um, you know thinking in terms of what will happen to the victim now. So there are different reasons in which they do not intervene in in such scenarios. But yeah, there are a lot of awareness campaigns that are happening, and in our programs also, where we talk about bystander intervention, we do explain to them why it is important for you to intervene at a particular point if you see violence taking place. One, because it's not okay for violence to happen. Two, because there has to be a support system in your communities also. So if you as a part see that there is a person who is facing harassment on the road, and if you don't intervene, you're kind of part of the problem. Then you are also supporting the person who is perpetrating violence. So these things have to be made aware. Then again, especially in rural areas where people are more prone to know each other more, uh, you know in a more in more proximity, it's important that you create these support systems for yourself. And it's also important that, if there are legal protections which are available, you do take those stands, you take the law, you go and report such cases. And you only get these confidence if there is somebody who has witnessed the harassment, witnessed the violence taking place, who is actually going to take your stand, who's actually going to support you into this. Otherwise, it's a lone person who can't be fighting all the battles. So, yeah, there are, again, Breakthrough has started a very good bystander intervention campaign, which has been running for some time now. And even in Voice for Girls programs, we talking to girls, we talking to boys, we do focus on, again, understanding violence, recognizing violence, and taking action against violence. These three are extremely important. Bystander interventions are also important because most people do not recognize what is violence and what is not. They don't recognize that uh, calling somebody names on the road can be violence. We only feel, when we think about harassment, when we think about violence, we only feel it's something when people are physically hurt and physically violated, it's violence. It's not. Verbal, emotional, it can be sexual, it can be even looks, which matter in this case. And that has to be made aware for people to recognize when they need to intervene.
To add on what you just mentioned, I would like to share a very small anecdote from my personal experience. So when I was very small, we had this house helps coming and going, and I used to see scars on their face. Every week a new scar is there, and when we asked, she informed that her husband hit her. And first time it was shocking for me, but when it was so, and later it got so common that I was like, oh, it's fine, a man hits a woman is normal, or vice versa. But when we grew up, we learned about the things, we learned about different topics, we researched for it. It just became so sad that I couldn't do anything for them. We couldn't do anything for them. And uh, some people are not privileged enough to share or to gain these knowledge, and they just, they are in this circle of, is a common thing that a man hits a woman. And when they know about it, when they came to know about it, they just act normal as well. They don't do anything. So after this, I feel bystander intervention as one of the training methods is so important, especially in India, where people don't have resources and much of resources to gain knowledge from. And to move further, Nyanika,
Can I just
can you?
add one point over there,
Yes,
Yatika?
yes, yes.
Because you reminded me of a incident that happened way back when I was in college, and I feel it's important to share at this platform. So again, very similar to what you had experienced. Um, I was staying in a part of Hyderabad which was getting developed at that point of time, and I studied in TISS Hyderabad. So all the girls, we were in one building. It was our hostel, and there was a building under construction opposite to our building. And one evening, one of the girls from their balcony saw this woman being dragged by her hair on the road, bleeding. And of course, all of us took a stand. We called the women helpline number, we called the child helpline number because there was a child involved in it. We called the police. And after some time, after a while, and we were tracking that where is this man going, because as we started, creating this noise, the man got scared and he ran into the under construction building and with the woman and the child. And once the police came, the helpline numbers came, all of them were there. The police started searching for the man. We were there. We were, really trying to help this woman out. And they finally found the man. And when this woman was asked that, what are you going to do? Are you going to file a complaint against this person or not? She said no. And she said, okay, I'm going to go back to my brother's house now. And I'm going to come back after 2 days. And we all get disheartened, because we always talk about how we should intervene, how we should take stand, how we should help people who face violence. And at that point, we felt that we were helping you and you did not take our help. And now you're just saying that, this person who has inflicted violence on you, you're just going to come back. And of course, these disheartened young college going students went back to college the next day. And we were talking about this to our professor, and she just pointed out to say that, hey, this is not your decision to make. So, even as bystanders, we need to know that yes, support the person who is facing violence, do intervene, but do not expect them to take the resolution that you would have taken. Because at the end of the day, again, it's their life and they are humans, they are adults, they are individuals, they know what they're doing. You can tell them all the laws which are available. So, we told her, you can file a case under XYZ and you can do this. And yet she was like, yeah, I know, but I'm going to come back because I don't have a source of income. I don't have money. Who is going to feed me and my child? So I'm going to come back. So that's exactly what I'm tying back to say that, a lot of times this economic disability that we call, like there's no source of income for you, you're not economically independent, you're not financially independent, and these things really stop you for taking action, reporting violence and talking about it. And that's a serious case. And even as bystanders, we need to understand that it is not you who can take it's not you who can take action against the other person. You have to take respect the decision which is taken by the person who has faced violence, and you have to understand that it sometimes you can be a supporter in their battle but you can't fight their battles.
You said it very rightly, and I agree with you. And just to add one point here, uh, there's a school in Mumbai. I forgot the name, and they have on their walls they have written the helpline numbers, and they make their students learn these numbers. I think when they conduct their assembly or something, they ask everyone as a part of, they conduct like a small examination and they ask them each and every helpline number. And I think when they grow up, it will be so much beneficial. And one more thing, they have written those the numbers inside the school and as well as the outside walls of the school. So if a person crossing the street and they face something, they can just immediately call, or maybe any bystander, they can just immediately call the helpline number and ask for help. So I think that is a very great initiative by that school. I will research on that school and let you know the name as well.
Sure, definitely. But I think this is actually prevalent in a lot of places. Even when we go to we work with a lot of rural schools, residential schools, as well as day schools. And if you ask what's a child helpline number, most of the children will tell you it's 1098. So I think we are aware, but we also need to know how to utilize it. I think that's the main point over here.
Yes, yes, correct. So I think we should move on and discuss more further things regarding street harassment. So, according to you, what impact does street harassment have on women's and marginalized groups' participation in public life?
Um, as simply as we can put it, if we face violence outside, how likely are we going to utilize those public spaces, right? And that's exactly what happens. I think there are a lot of examples. If we just ask women in our day-to-day lives and we ask them that if you have you faced any sort of violence outside your homes, most of them are likely to say yes, and most of them are likely to also say that yes, it restricted their mobility at least for some time. And that's point number one. There is restriction of movement, and it's often self imposed because we are so scared to go out after some time. that we just don't want to attend movements, we don't want to attend events, we don't want to engage in activities which are in public spaces. And it really kind of restricts the person's entire being, because if you're not able to go out, if you're not able to do your day to day work, it is difficult for you to also take part in economic participation. Because for most economic participation, you have to be in a public space. You either have to commute, you either have to work in a public space. It does contribute to economic disadvantages. Then again, there's a lot of mental and emotional strain, and we cannot let go of the mental harassment that often street sexual harassment place. There's a lot of mental strain where we often feel that anything can happen if I go out on the road, and that strain stays with you for a longer time. And of course, there is an impact on your social engagement. A person will start to withdraw from social gatherings, public events. Even for recreation, you're not likely to go out, and you would avoid potential harassment on the road, and that is what it does to you. But more than women, I think we have to focus on also the other marginalized groups, including the LGBTQ plus individuals, people with disabilities, ethnic minorities. They often face compounded harassment. So if the person is a woman and has some form of disability, she is more likely to withdraw herself from public engagement than just a woman, right? So that's also going to happen to them. There are books which have addressed these issues, and on top of my mind is Fearless Freedom from Kavita Krishnan. And she has written beautifully from the time of Nirbhaya rape case to 2020. She has really noted down to say, in what are the ways people do actually stop accessing public institutions or just being out on street for recreational activities also, because they have faced harassment at some or the other time. And going back to my incident, actually I also, I did not want to go to school for the longest time, and I would always accompany with a friend, or I would ask my brother or my father to actually drop me. And my parents couldn't understand why is this sudden stark difference that has happened, because I've always been okay to go and walk on the street, so why is it now? If you see the entire movement around I will go out, which was framed around this, to say you cannot restrict a person because of the clothes that they are wearing. And often when a person faces harassment on road in public spaces, it is blamed on the clothes that they're wearing. And we have heard it way too often that, there she was wearing a short skirt, she was wearing shorts, who asked her to go out at night. So why are we talking about this? And the I will go out movement was framed around that yes, we can wear anything we want and we can be on the street. And street sexual harassment has had a major influence on the dropout rates of adolescent girls. While working in rural schools, Voice for Girls has found two prominent reasons of dropout, and they're kind of intertwined. One being that a lot of schools do not have beyond standard 8. And I'm talking in the rural settings, in the rural tribal settings of India. They do not have beyond standard 8. So if a girl wants to study after standard 8, she has to go to a nearby village. Now that village can be say 10 kilometers, 15 kilometers away. She has to take public transport or she has to walk to the nearest school that is possible. High chances of harassment. Likely what happens, the parents will ask her not to go out and they make her sit at home. And if she sits at home, what happens? Child marriage. Because if you're not studying, if you're not bringing in money into the family, there is an extra mouth to feed. So that gives rise to child marriages in India. And yes, they are still prevalent, highly. So yeah, apart from, of course, the mental distress or just, withdrawn from public spaces, this can actually lead to child marriages, teenage pregnancies, and overall kind of the girl will get lost into the system. We will not be able to track her back into the system because we don't know where she has gone. So there's increased vulnerability also. And again, bringing back to say There's barriers to advocacy and representation. There's a lot of times people fear facing further harassment if they voice it out, and especially if they face harassment in the form of in the hands of somebody who is already powerful. And especially from the marginalized communities, there's a lot of underrepresentation in decision making processes and policy development, so we see further lack of reporting from their side.
Um, from this conversation, I just like to ask you that we discussed about different cultures, different countries, and urban and rural settings as well. But I would like to ask you, is there any difference between the perceptions of people in India in different regions, maybe north and south or west and east? Is there any difference on perceptions?
Again, I think it's an idea inside us that the southern states are more progressive than the northern states. And I often hear people saying that, in south states it won't happen. It mostly in Haryana and Delhi that it happens. But for me, as I've stayed in north, I've stayed in east, I've stayed in south, harassment has been prevalent across states. What has not been prevalent a lot of times is how they are reported. Delhi news is things come out often on the news, so the entire India thinks that okay, Delhi is unsafe, Delhi is unsafe, Delhi is unsafe. But I am in Telangana, I'm in Hyderabad, and there have been reports from Hyderabad. Sometimes they have not got a national coverage, but they have got a state level coverage. So it's also on which state are we seeing most coverages coming from. And we can't hold it accountable for the real numbers, because the real numbers will often differ from what the numbers are being projected. So I think it will be unwise to say that there are some states which have very high number of harassment and the some states which do not. They do occur equally in across India, but yeah, for my understanding, it's mostly the way it is expressed and delivered into the newspapers that is finally gets into the people's brain.
Uh, Thank you for sharing that. And yes, I used to believe the opposite of what you said. But even now, my perception has changed as well. Because I remember traveling from north to south, and I was traveling like around 12 noon. I took a cab to Delhi airport, and I was constantly sharing my locations to my friends, to my family, and I wasn't listening to any music. I wasn't watching anything. I was just so worried at 12 noon. But when I reached South, I reached around 11:30 p.m. and I felt safe, and I didn't share my locations with anyone, and I was listening to music. I booked an auto and I felt very safe. But exactly the next day, one of my friends, uh, uh, she uh, she got catcalled on the street, and when she told me, my perception immediately got changed. So yeah, I completely agree with you here.
Yeah, so it's like just prevalent, but of course, how people talk about it majorly gets into our notions, and it somehow forms the notions that we have about a particular city or particular region. But Yatika, I can completely feel you, like sharing your location, sharing constantly, being on phone call and making the person feel that, somebody knows where I am. I think these are just normal ways in which women navigate through public spaces in general, be it day, be it night. You would take precautions, you would carry something with you as safety, you would share your location with a friend, you would be on a call, you would share the location or the number of the car or the cab or the auto that you're traveling. I think these are just the precautions that we have automatically taken. Sad, but yes, necessary.
Yes, exactly. It's very sad. Uh, but moving on and building on these conversation, can you tell me what community-led initiatives exist to combat street harassment and how effective have they been?
There are some community and educational campaigns which are there. So if you see right now, most of the schools have also started raising awareness around street harassment. And often see, especially in urban areas, the schools which are existing, they do these educational campaigns where social norms are taught, or respectable behavior in public spaces are taught. Again, it's also taught on how, what constitutes as harassment and what does not. Like as I said before, most people are not aware that even just simply cat calling is a harassment. They feel that until and unless I touch someone, it's not. So of course these educational campaigns have started. There are community level practices done by different organizations, but there are also community levels which have started in the most rural system. So they do these Anganwadi nataks. They are again NGO led most of the time, but they have started these nataks which are happening where they are trying to depict what harassment is, what violence is. If you face violence, what sort of actions are you supposed to take? And it's kind of gaining traction now where people are getting aware about what is harassment and what are the measures that they can be taken. So yeah, that's it.
All right. Uh, there are any legal considerations or any laws that say that they protect people from street harassment?
There are the previously called IPCs, Indian Penal Codes, had a lot of acts around it. So there were acts, especially if you're verbally accused. So any kind of verbal commentary which is considered to be harassment was under that. So it can be like calling somebody, singing songs at them, singing lewd songs, singing making sexual comments, all constituted in that. They were on to say if you're physically hurt. So if somebody physically violates your circle or your body, that also constitutes as harassment. And again, under IPC 509, there was to say that, if you are sexually harassed, and this does not only count as when you are raped, but also to say that if somebody shows you, any private parts without your consent, if somebody shows you pictures which you do not want to see, if somebody is showing you their parts or trying to click pictures of yours in social in public spaces. So yeah, there are laws which exist. Again, very few people know about it, and even if they know, there is hesitance to use it.
Yes, I totally agree. And I just reminded that I think in 2019 or 2020, France has criminalized catcalling. And this approach contrasts with many other countries where street harassment might not be specifically addressed by law or is treated as a minor offense. So, in countries without such legislation, harassment often remains underreported and legal remedies might be limited or unclear.
If you see, actually, most countries do have laws against street harassment, and even when you call catcalling, yes, France did make it illegal. But in Indian context, also, if you see, IPC 294 did really talk about how catcalling is illegal. So yeah, countries, a lot of countries do have it. Very small, probably Middle Eastern countries or Central Asian nations, which may not, or some part of Africa who do not have very specific laws to street harassment. But again, most countries do have. It's the lack of awareness which is creating the major issue.
Uh, Thank you for sharing that. And I think from all the conversation we had today, our audience had, much pretty view on what is bystander or what is street harassment and what are the barriers that exist. So, just one thing I want to ask is how do gender norms in different societies influence the incidence and perception of street harassment?
Um, Gender norms in different cultures. So again, gender norms are basically how each genders are expected to perform their roles, right? So most of the times, if we see, if I spoke before, marginalized communities do face greater problems in addressing street sexual harassment. So we often talk about women, but if countries trans people are not recognized at all, if there are countries where trans people are not recognized at all, they may feel more, they may have hindrance more in order to report violence that is happening to them, because then there'll be laws who do not really specifically talk about them, who do not really cover them. So how then they are going to talk about street harassment? But again, I would like to bring into notion how different occupations do also talk about it, right? So if somebody is a sex worker, and this is coming from my research which I did long time back, but to say that somebody who is a sex worker, they will, if they face violence, especially in public spaces, they face greater problem in reporting the violence, because one, there's a social taboo which says that because you do such work, you may be expected to face this. So there's nothing new that is happening to you. You already have faced it. It's your work. So why are you coming and reporting it now? So people in those cases find it very difficult in order to get medical help, in order to get legal help, and that needs to be recognized. And I'm not just talking about female sex workers, it can be male sex workers also. So, gender norms and some occupations do play a crucial role on where do you stand in the social strata. And your gender orientation will also form where do you stand on social strata.
Exactly. And for our audience, I would like to say if you have any questions or any point to share, please put it in the comment box or you can raise your hand as well. So, thank you, Nayanika, for sharing that. And there's one thing, I mean, as we are wrapping up our event today, uh, is there any one key takeaway from your side which you can share with our audience and it will be really grateful.
Yes, my one key take away from, of course, today's discussion and also about working in the sector is people often commit crimes because they are not aware about what they are doing will have consequence on their lives. So when we feel there is no consequence, we are more likely to commit it. And that's what happens in most cases, like catcalling or following someone, because we don't think that it is violence. We just feel that we are having fun and we are doing something which will have no consequence in our life or in their life. So one point is to create awareness as much as possible, with all genders as much as possible, recognizing that how different genders may face different forms of violence. It's not that men don't face violence, we also need to recognize that, and also talk about it. We often put honor at such a high position that we feel that if I am talking about violence, and I'm sure you must have heard it, कि अच्छे घर की लड़कियां ये सब बातें नहीं करती. So you have always heard about such things in our families or in our communities. So when we talk about these, we need to be mindful that how we do not make the person who has faced violence feel bad about having voiced it out. So be there, listen to people, create safe spaces for them to voice it out, and share. Talk about it more, share about your experience, share about how you have felt in such situations, share about what consequences it can have, and also to say whenever you put out some media, talk about it wisely, because in today's time social media is a very powerful tool. So if you are somebody who is making advertisements, if you're making movies, or even if you're just sharing a meme thinking it's a funny thing and it promotes violence or it promotes harassment, stop it there, because people learn from what others are saying. Oftentimes when we talk to adolescent boys and we say, why did you actually think that standing on the road and calling somebody names is fine, it's common. And oftentimes the response that we get is to say, because our seniors did that, we thought we it is cool to do it. So don't make it a cool quotient. The onus lies on us, on what our future generation is also learning from us or what our peers are learning from us. So if we don't start vocalizing, others won't too. So it's important to raise our voice and create that safe space where people can raise their voice.
That is very rightly said, Nyonika, and I totally agree with you. And I would like everyone to share this recording with your friends, with your family, because it is very, very informative. And maybe it's a basic points or basic learnings, but it has a major impact on our community. So, today's discussion has shed light on the pervasive issue of street harassment and its impact across different cultures and settings. We have explored how definitions, reporting practices, and experiences vary, and highlighted the crucial role of bystander intervention and its influence on public life. I would like to thank you, Neonika, for sharing your valuable learnings and contributing to this important conversation. Your expertise has truly enhanced our understanding of this critical issue.
Thank you, Yatika, and thanks to Safe City and Red Dot for doing this amazing work. And yes, do share about the anonymous poll that you guys take because we would also like to use it and get back to you and see what are the actual results stand in. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And yes, I will share it with you. And I also want to extend my gratitude to everyone who joined us today as well. And let's carry forward the learnings from today to create safer and more inclusive public spaces for all. Thank you once again for your participation, and we hope to see you at our future events as well. So we can end the space. Thank you. Bye and good night.
Bye. Thank you.